Nina, you good? Yep. Exclusive forms of argumentation have made debate technocratic and elite. It desubsidizes debaters to violence and racism and teaches us to care more about nuclear war than solving structural violence within our own community. Thus, you all of the judges but with the debate who better formally and methodologically provides a resistance strategy for the oppressed. Assuming that debate is just a game rather than a performance allows debaters to be disconnected from their speech act, but you should be held culpable for the arguments you make. Vincent 13. Debate should be good as performance. Judges must be accountable for the discourse they endorse for the validating aspect, and that allows us to assume a speech can be disconnected from the speech act for those with pleasure never foster the performance attached to the arguments of viewers would as paper words are seen as the bottom meaning to the performance body with the words attached to the body itself. Performance are always a reflection of the ideology we heard, and space like video only to and the repetition of bodies that inhabit the material becomes molded around a body shape. If that body constantly sits in it, when I sink into a chair, if I fit in the mold, I do not know disappointing attention between my body and the chair. Bodies sink into a chair in the same way bodies sink into institutions. Whiteness coherent space in such shape. Bodies that fit in these spaces orientation do not notice friction, while the bodies that don't experience attention. This is why debate tournaments are full of white guys and suits, because when people of color, women enter the cafeteria, they're immediately marked as out of place. Almost 7. Public spaces take shape through habitual action of bodies. If I stand in front of my desk and lean down, only my hands are stretched, my body shows behind the direction of my body towards an action. How the body appears whiteness could be understood as behind white bodies show behind action. Then you're not destroying white bodies that are face. So whiteness, white bodies collided from the edge. Space only whiteness and whiteness is not seen the effects of institutionalization and like increasing on by what if you visible and the space institution be given as the fact of repetition of usage to be oriented to be so easy to hard to swing one bodies and the world again. And this creates friction. Bodies are stopped and interrogated when they're not fit in the orientation of this space. Feminist speech and space and white supremacy becomes these sets and act. This equality makes it impossible, unconscious and informal mechanism of exclusion between participants are not on an even playing field. Even when minoritarians have to choose speak, they're not heard. Addressing social inequalities of prerequisite for further toleration. Phrase 90. Women was for the political participation on the basis of judges have to look at the statistical interaction with former arena the public which government to come that marks status inequality to function marginalized women and preventing for participating in the language we use by one word seems to support groups cannot find the right words when they do they're not heard their own questions when they've said no social inequality affected operation and this affective orientation of institutions to believe the energy of marginalized bodies that are open to the orientation of the space are forced to go against the flow of the institution which causes psychic exhaustion force of to spend energy to get it from the money keep fighting. This is a form of psychological violence alienation isolation within a debate to believe the energy of minoritized bodies held up a simple idea of diversity when they do well and experience microaggressions when they don't. Thus we advocate the methodology the feminist killjoy a symbol of deviancy that we refuses the requirement to be happy or complicit with a system of oppression or affective analysis contest the hegemonic structures celebration of the marginalized oppressed and kill the joy of white comfortability on the 10. Give the killjoy back a voice. Political activism as they struggle against happiness, be willing to go against a social issue cause and happiness, feminist failure to happiness, sabotaging the happiness of others who refuse to go along with it, speaking as causing trouble when you charge with willingness to beings refuse to go, but we can mobilize your charge on push your to push yourself you that you the collective moment to graduate to insist to go against what you drink and what you judge being willfulness to together different kind of exists to be willful to be willing to become disagree but willing to turn the bodies of black points off funny kind of free to be happy is a freedom to look away from willfulness is disloyalty be not upward and it kills the joy of a person institution and refuse the requirement to be happiness that are forced upon the medicine and turn rejection of the patriarchal complicity and happiness embracing and orientation outside the institution the net benefit is collectivization. Our methodology is active self-love that opens up a space of solidarity and connects minoritized bodies together. Our methodology is supposed to spotting up moves that refuse to minimize apology space of solidarity was all psychological consequences. We refuse internal demands to be happy in space that are processed on my 14. When you're not supposed to live survival as radical self-care becomes welfare. If it is system change we need you have to manage calling out an individual matters even when the system is also willing to challenge these challenges to pick up one collectively requires you much back experience all fighting from the space of cloudness message anti-politics and something so bad. By some of those two challenges power just concerned with themselves and direction of care so how we now work caring for the device work caring about the self about the creation of community sound of the experience of being child we sample through looking after self and this is a survival strategy to benefit even if we need to work on macro structural change we need to be able to survive within those structures. In the meantime now underview forces reject picks they prevent it from engaging in the thesis of community liberation charge because we are forced to focus on minute details and it kills one our ability to engage because it moves 6 minutes race the offensive infinite amount of things you can pick out of which is the real whole money the whole about because we'll never find the best liberation strategy. Second is empirics proof of 5% high bias for negative elimination around battle 15 with a data set of 216 eliminate from the app when unneeded one rate of 45% and 300 for the negative is more likely of any outcome in perform PO analytics because they can phone to actually happen in debate if analytic contrast with empirics that means the analytic is wrong. Third, this app is very fun if open sources happen in the case of speed of the little vortex of the app as well you could have predicted and prohibited strategy which needs so engagement velocity only after one topic if you don't have a strategy or to be spun is those literature a lot the topic literature in the context of discourse operates within space within bodies i.e. the idea of freedom of speech is to short when you decide who is his right to institutional puppets to false exponents. You can engage in many ways. You can read reason by all method, win false stereotypes, you could counter method, you could capture, you could apple pessimism, critiques of affect, great false making, disidentification, bestiality, wage battle, from boosts of a huge section of critical literature. If you cannot engage, you should have gone to the other side of the library. Fourth, get over your eyes and counter interpretation of theory and TJ. When it's time to your theme with the entirety of the app to go all in a substantive theory, which everyone covers skills out strategy. Piece one is substantive education, but no, if you guys see the debate class with theory, no education, anyway with theory education is kicked, and there's huge emphasis topics that discussing fifth is evaluative question of this app specifically. So it doesn't matter whether just by norm setting is empirical nowadays. One is people say we know names and uppers all the time, and these way divider debaters all weed whatever shows strategic and run no norms that that's why we still plans good bad debates, and even if norms can be separate in one theory, this round is not tried out even though has to read on any given topic. Six is if the night cleanse is the topical versus the app, they need to get plan X, and the one see that was self method to me though interpretation. Obviously if it exists, it probably would have what it I'll read more stuff and I'll flash it after. Next is before usability with the Bartland vaccines like in fact to underground and being disclosed my interpretation of usability means that destroy one Bartland action like how interpretation between sensitive and vaccine epidemic is substantive education community interpretation includes fairly marginal because it instead of us initiating a theory been a constant debate with theory and so this always because we learn too much debate topic and learn different things about how the government of the world looks with the same theory debates each year. 7 I think is the world valid concept with theory embracing alternate forms of debate is crucial common approach with another debates in ground practice debate is creating multiple layers create hard conversation forward to exclusionary debates based with 13 racism and debate content by choice students making a clear basis competitive systems of conversation materiality community some competitors don't make up rules to safe hard conversations. I'll flash the two arguments I read.
Okay, when you're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Does Neg get RBIs?
I don't take a chance on that.
I want you to concede that Neg also gets RBIs.
No.
If you meet reasonability, do you get an RBI?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the case. So, you say that we should look to performances. How have you been a feminist killjoy in the debate community?
Outside of this round or inside this round? Because the Vincent evidence is talking about inside this round.
Sure. So, how are you actually challenging things in the debate community besides just saying, there is oppression and, there are problematic structures?
Well, yeah, the Ahmed 10 evidence contextualizes what a method is, i.e., it's being willful against system of oppression, being disobedient by refusing to be happy within systems of oppression.
The debate community.
Sorry?
How do you personally disobey the norms of the debate community? Lots of people feel like the debate community is screwed up in a variety of ways, but, how are you actually challenging that?
In this round or outside of round?
Either.
Well, sure. Our methodology challenges that via kind of refusing the requirements that debate places on us, and that the debate both consciously and subconscious modes of decorum operate. For example, the fact that women, as contextualized by the phrase evidence, are always told to be submissive or also dismissed as nagging, kind of refusing those types of requirements.
So the app methodology is just we should refuse to just agree that oppression's okay.
No, it gives a conceptualization of the way power operates by forcing marginalized bodies to be happy and complicit within system of oppression. The feminist killjoy is an affective orientation.
What's the minimum requirement to be a feminist killjoy? If I'm just in an oppressive institution and I say, it's bad that this institution is oppressive, is that sufficient?
I'm not sure what you mean by sufficient to be a feminist killjoy. It's not a requirement placed on people. If you use the method.
Feminist killjoy if they're just in a space and they say there's oppression here.
It's not just saying there's oppression, but refusing to kind of see the power of the orientation of the institution. Kind of things like calling out sexist arguments or the killjoy, for example, kills the joy by calling out sexist jokes.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so is it an attitude that an individual takes on towards the institution or an action?
It's an affective orientation. It's the way we orient ourselves, kind of, which results in things
if I'm within an oppressive institution and I just sit down and I'm this oppressive institution sucks, I am not going to agree to be happy within it, but I don't do anything. Am I a feminist killjoy?
Yes, that is an affective orientation. That is doing something.
Okay, how does how do you do something if someone just like looks at the external world and says that there are problems in it, but they don't actually change the structures for anyone else?
A couple arguments. Ace one is that is not doing something. Refusing to be complicit is an action. That's contextualized by the method. The
okay,
point would be,
sure, it's like a mindset, but how does that mindset help people who are like tangibly impacted by systems of oppression starting from?
Yeah, it's a disorientation of the way that institutions operates, i.e. refusing to go with the flow of that institutions. The basic point is that even if we do not win structural change, it creates spaces of solidarity for individuals to resolve things like psychological violence, which is probably good.
Okay.
All right, I'm good. 2 off case.
Okay, I'm probably gonna skip around with analytics on theory, so I'll like let you know what I am and I'm not reading. Whenever it's good.
Yep.
A interpretational affirmative position must take a stance on whether or not literal restrictions on freedom of speech are good or bad. To clarify, you can read an affirmative position that says some sort of restriction on free speech within the debate community or any sort of restriction on speech is a good or a bad thing, which means that you are not tied specifically to the resolution. You just need to take some sort of stance on whether or not some external authority literally regulating speech is a good thing. B is a violation. You influx my principle that you do not steer the standards. I won't read the things in the document. One point substantive engagement. The fact that you just talk about things like decorum and the way in which speech is non-affective speech and the way that and avoiding being complicit in systems. Speech with the F is super vague implications. 8 point kill substantive engagement. We don't get to directly engage with the advocacy. Speech needs to be unclear about what actually happens. It's better to hold you to an advocacy in which you specifically talk about actually regulating speech. That means that there's something concrete we can hold it to. Also, B point prevents. It's better for critical education. Your advocacy just says that someone can be within a system and say that that system is bad, which prevents us from actually critically engaging and changing the structures that impact other people. Also outweighs everything. Unless we change these structures within places like the debate community, then certain people cannot engage in the conversation, which means that it's most important that we talk about concrete actions rather than just ideology. Second, only demarcations of the field of speech enable discussion. Fish 90 silence is to do with the shape of discourse. Thought of any sequential and rational kind can only be preceded when definition is spin. Unless you have any demarcations of the field that you are about to explore, you cannot proceed because you have no direction. Since speech and reasoning are the only occur when something is in place of something that could have been always, you preclude the possibility of any sort of discussion. Yes, there should be afflux. That also takes all of your arguments. F has flexibility in choosing an advocacy. They're just bound by the resolution. Next is predictability in research. When you get to pick any sort of advocacy that's not tied to the resolution at all, kills my ability to directly engage with your position. Also kills my ability to have highest quality prep, which means that we will have worse solutions, which is bad for inclusion. Also, free speech is a super important issue. 8 point is prerequisite to engaging in any sort of discussion about activism. Since any discussion presupposes the ability to share ideas. B point, it will impact all of us when we were in college, which means that it's the most important issue for us to talk about. C point is most concrete. We should obviously saying something like we should not be complicit in oppressive institutions is pretty straightforward. Whereas free speech is a more multifaceted issue, which means that it will have more of an impact out around stable systems to have a better discussion. Also, framing issue. All of her arguments about reasonability presuppose an idea, presuppose that we only care about fairness, but insofar as it's a question of competing methodologies, if her methodology is bad, and it's not only to inclusion, that's definitely a reason that you should vote against her. D is the voter education. It's a voter only reason that schools fund debate and that people do it. Fairness is a voter continue publications judge for the better debate, not the better teacher, which you cannot do. If the right is inherently skewed, also it's a gateway issue to the ability to engage in any sort of argument in the first place. Also, actually drop the debate or set a positive V to deter future BC by Hamilton theory. There is no issue in competing interpretations, reasonable and arbitrary. I'll get to the RBI and the AC next up. It is a counterplan text. We should be women, non-feminist, cultures, feminists, there includes women of color and prioritizes the needs of white women. High at 14, the feminist movement was middle class white women's movement and really includes women of color. The movement for suffrage for white women. Feminism really addresses equality and justice for black women. Never involved in civil rights to guarantee black women's social equality. White women feels you recognize not encompass perspectives of the African American women. Many women of color can associate with feminism and identified with the term womanist. Some feminists presented men as the enemy seen in separatist movements. Womanism emphasizes the importance of family committed to survival and wholeness. Womanism fights for justice against radical racial oppression against African American men and women. Womanism is included and represented like other women's perspective and voices. Feminism can't be made inclusive, even still forms of narratives are excluded within feminist spaces. Only womanism enables all individuals to be included. Martin 10. Many black women have turned to womanism to counter ways and oppression of race and gender affect lives. Womanism is based in spirituality, understanding the communal value of people of color. They're trying to focusing on white women when continue blogs, which are largely run by women, dominate the blogosphere. The very same hierarchy that academia has seen perpetuating. How can you claim the label of those who oppress you to see their goals realized even when commonality exists in some areas? Not only the feminist label represents fluffing myself in the face of bigotry now. Under view first framing issue allowed to an our responses. A point, the arguments are not full since they are not implicated. Also B point, incentivize to put lots of libby arguments that are not fully fleshed out in order to prove that people's doctrine, which is critical education with power structures. Now line by line, also for direct text. 1 point, I should be able to have a critique against a non-topical F. A point, you have infinite prep time, which means you're automatically an advantage. Also B point, the F is super shifty, which means that I need to have the ability to grasp some of your advocacy in order to engage with it. Also which means that pics are literally my only ground against it. Also, you say empirics prove that it's easier to affirm one point for substantive justifications over empirics, since empirics can be biased based on the situation. They don't prove causality too. It's harder to negate, since app has the ability to pick any advocacy specifically, since it's non-topical, which means that you have infinite prep time. So I just managed to negate. Also, 3-point app judges give app leeway because since people think that it is harder to affirm, which means that you will now be at an advantage. Now, when you say that this app is fair, you say it's open source. 1 point, that does not mean it's educational. Also, 2 point, it's open source, but it's super big, which means that I don't have any ability to prepare against it. You say that there is literature. 1 point, even if there's literature, you're still at an advantage, since I have to prep against all of these topical apps, which means that I'm still at a disadvantage. Also, too, you can still talk about issues being a feminist killjoy within the context of some sort of free speech restriction, which makes your app more concrete, so that literature will be more useful. You said that I can engage in many ways, but that's just a question of what kind of engagement, but the equality of engagement. If the app is vague, then I will not have the best arguments against it. You say that I get RBI. 1 point, app will be super unfair in order to debate the theory, which is empirically proven, since the main thing you have to prep for this app is against T. You say times, you get to read new shells. You also get to leverage the app against theory, which means you're at an advantage. You say substantive education. No, it sets a positive norm and deters you reading unfair arguments if you don't get it. You say evaluate T from a question of this app is fair. It's not just a question of norm setting. No, it's a question of, for example, people do not read infinity a prioris anymore. Like, so you said that you say reasonability. No, competing interest is better. 1 point, we should use reasonability in every other instance, but this one, since that leads to a better norm. 2 point, reasonability leads to a race to the bottom, in which people will just using any bright line to justify their practices. 3 point, reasonability doesn't take into account educational considerations. Also, 4 point, my counter methodology is criticizing the way you approach the resolution. Also, Smith 13, you said that we need to embrace alternate forms of debate. That means theory is a good thing, to enable us to question things from a variety of angles. Now go to the case top down. Alpha Vincent, 1 point, you are detached from your performance. You just say that you're a killjoy, but you are not radical. Just saying that oppression exists in the debate community is something that is generally agreed upon, which means that you do not challenge the system. So, 2 point, free speech is about the tangible ways in which we interact with other people, which means that it's much more important to talk about. 3 point, debate is something that is verbal, which means that we should talk about the ways in which our speech is regulated and the way we engage in debate, which is a prerequisite to even having our discussion. The first was Alpha Amino 7. You said that our group Amino 7 and Fraser. 1 point, the deliberative structure is part of the free speech issue, which means that you definitely could have had discussion of these kind of issues in the ACM, and to directly talk about free speech, which would have made your app much more concrete. And also, off the element 10 card, you say that you care about deviance. 1 point, you're complicit in the system when you say that just changing our ideology is sufficient. Also proves that you are not a feminist killjoy, since it is a sign of privilege to be able to say that just changing your ideology is revolutionary when there are structures that still oppress other people, which means that the entire thesis of the app is that we shouldn't do anything to actually challenge oppressive structures, which means that you cannot solve.
Okay, so you had the first off, the second off, but nothing under 3.
Yeah, and I didn't read the analytics in theory.
Yeah, none of them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Does theory come before substance?
Yeah.
What's the status of the counterplan?
Unconditional.
Okay. What does the movement of the counterplan look like? Like, what is the distinction of the movement of the counterplan versus the movement of the app?
Well, part of it is the way in which the movement would identify itself, and the way in which divisions are constructed. So the feminist movement is sometimes framed in terms of women versus men, which is something that the counterplan would problematize because it's something that's more about survival and wholeness. And
wait, where does the app create that division?
So part of the thing is just when you say that you're a feminist, that's part of what the baggage of the movement means, and you can't separate yourself from that.
Okay, so it's the term feminism?
Partially, but it's also when you say you're a feminist killjoy, it's not just womanist is a better word. Feminist means certain things.
Okay, where have you justified your conception of what feminism means?
What do you mean?
Why?
Both of the Hyatt and Martin cards talk about that. It talks about the origins of the feminist movement and what goals are generally associated with feminism. And I would argue that terms are defined contextually, so you can't just be oh, this is what Google would define feminism as.
Sure. So I guess. Okay. Let's go to the theory shop. You said that I could read it about speech regulation within the debate community. Could you give me an example of what that would look like?
So someone had an app about the CETA Constitution, and how we shouldn't restrict speech that's protected in the CETA Constitution, and so they read stuff about how
Who shouldn't restrict? Wait. That
like
wasn't
we shouldn't
wait.
restrict speech based on the
Wait. That was not a literal regulation. Logan Weed was arguing against discursive modes of decorum, not literal regulations. How does that meet your interpretation?
Well, no, yeah, because it was like judges were saying like, oh no, like you can't read this position, and I wanted.
But that wasn't a restriction on speech. What is a literal restriction on freedom of speech?
Like it would be, you'd have to have some sort of discussion of like an advocacy that some group of people tell another group that they're not allowed to say something.
How is that not the app?
How is it not the app?
Yes.
So the app would have to like center on a discussion of, so it's not just like, oh, there are people, it's not just like a norm, but it would be some sort of communal decision. So you could also have some sort of position where it's like, there shouldn't be rules at tournaments against the ability to read certain arguments.
I'm Gucci. So it's case, top-down, topicality, counterplan?
Yep. Nina, you good? Are you good?
Nina?
Oh, I said I was good.
Okay, thanks. Cool.
Oh, no worries.
Extend all matters of an spaces operate with and have a commission or repetition of orientation of bodies that inhabit them, bodies that don't fit in and experience friction or force with expectation of women to be they're expected to be submissive and they aren't. If they aren't, they're in a space of nagging, which means we apply our question to the T-shell because only we give people the energy to get up and keep finding these discursive norms now away from the right methodology of the founders guild to do so in the orientation debate. Never been as collectivization. We could affect the space of solidarity to come to the resolve of psychological violence of isolation with the debate, which means we apply our question and never been to orientation of the counterplan because only we give people the energy to keep fighting. Now the arguments have been to you said that I'm not radical. Each point is still so one for this. So Winston have just says you need to be held to your speech. I do know. Your next argument is that free speech is tangible. Each one is that no, free speech policies are not tangible, but only the app is tangible because it takes a state. So things that are happening in debate. Each one is that the app is a form of free speech. It's not just literal regulation. Now you say debate is bubble. There's just sensitive implication in this. Now you say I'm complicit because I'm not changing the system. Each one is that you consider on my 10, which is that we are changing the system by refusing to be complicit within the system. Now you say I'm not a feminist killjoy because I'm not changing the structure. Each one is there's no one for why we need to structural change. We free speech of solidarity. Each one is that we change the structural conditions. That's the alma evidence. We change the way the institutions operate. Now I'll go for that. The empirical way analytics because it proves actually what happens. You have no proof of why empirics do show things like causality, but even they do not show what actually happened, which means the app lose more rounds. That means it's harder to get. Additionally, the infinite pre-on pop is not unique. You can put counterplan lines for your NC studies. Now I'll go for reasonability with the wildlife action thing in fact, and this not just close. This is not arbitrary. It means you have the ability to engage, and if you do not have it's your fault. You can't say reasonability all the once. It presupposes competing interpretation is particular. It's obviously by when reasonability. Then it's a question of this round. This round. Now you say race at the bottom. Each one is tone. A race at the top is not worse because we never have substantive engagement. Each one is that if I'm being abusive, I'll never win because I can never meet my right line. Now you say no education. This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. You can say reasonability is more. There's more education. Now you say your counter methodology response. This is just not an argument. No, except no norm setting. Even if people don't read as abusive strategy, you can see that this fund is not trying down now. Theory. First, I need you say that Logan Reed's app is okay, but if Logan's app is okay, then my app is okay. Women are marginalized by discursive modes of decorum that operate subconsciously, and the app rejects that, which means I definitely read the text and the text and the spirit of the interpretation. I just say interpretation flaw. You do not define what a literal free speech regulation is, which means that it cannot set norms and is a reason to reject yourself because you cannot set norms that are competing interpretation. Now, I never benefits the app. You consider there's no topical voice of the app. Poison 90 said discourse modes of decorum to alternate to certain bodies that women are political spin the complaints of dismiss and which is only the app we can resolve this on substance education first on individual acts are the most relevant to our lives because we will never be policymakers, but we will have to deal with in-round questions. Second turn, you have tons of ways to engage. Cross-apply all the arguments for all the ways you can engage. We open up a lot of ways to engage. Now you say the predictability in the ground argument, the critical education. First, you definitely could have predicted, but you consider that it's the only app I read on topics. Second, unverifiable way you could predict it, which means it doesn't matter. Now, which means it doesn't matter. Just say reasonability is arbitrary. Turn committing interpretation is more arbitrary because the first is to avoid analytic theory based on the counterplan. First turn, you presuppose that feminism is a Western construct, which is a bad thing. Ahmed is a woman of color from Pakistan who obviously has a different conception of feminism. No reason to defend its second communication both of them. No figure the woman is the figure of the feminist skills away, willing, willful against the question Ahmed and feminist emotional sexual solidarity, holy second things about making charges skills you make her honest by putting away the feminine political division without her son of willfulness. There's a willful just has the equivalence of black feminist kill you willful behavior willfulness be claiming all lives third troll policing individual about bad because it kills solidarity against the movement. It's the exact same thing. Fourth, joint feminism is creating inclusive space of solidarity against white supremacy. Hooks, UK, we're gonna call it trans white people in places we put in a place of concrete politics solidarity that make genuine system of the fact of feminist movement conveys good people say well and communal liberation attachment to the movement's power. Cut it up power.
Wait, what did you read everything in the document?
Yes.
What was the third answer to the counterplan?
I think it was, I don't know what I read, but I think it was policing individual words is bad. You could not explain why the distinction between the movement other than the word. But that,
it's bad.
What?
Why is policing words bad?
Those coalitions against oppression because we're worried about what we're going to say and leave the movement.
Cool. So 2-hour overview, bottom of the F, T, counterplan. I'm good.
Okay. When everyone's good.
Yep.
Sorry. Theory will break down very clearly, given that in the one year she's super vague about what her advocacy is, and literally even says, I don't defend a specific form of feminism, rather, I defend another one which dealings all by arguments, which proves the entire abuse story on theory, which is that your advocacy is super, super vague, so we never know what it means, which means that there will never be substantive engagement. That you can see that controls the internal link to literally every single argument, since we can never have substantive engagement, even if the app is predictable. If I don't even know what you are defending, which means that it will be very easy for me to win that abuse story. You have conceded that I get new 2-0 responses to space, which means that it doesn't even matter if you're, which just means that it doesn't matter if you're winning the card from reasonability from the easiest second. Your responses to it, I will be about reasonability, but specifically because it proves that your methodology is bad and you don't have any ability to solve, which means that it will be terminal defense the entirety of case. Even if I lose theory, you can definitely vote neck on the counterplan, since the only argument she has are about why feminism is good, but there's or why feminism is good, but those arguments are not unique to feminism, and they obviously can be co-opted by womanism, which means that if I beat back the that's definitely sufficient for you to vote neck. Theory. Extend the interpretation that all affirmative positions must take a stance on whether or not a literal restriction on freedom of speech or gets spread. You say that you meet since you, or you say that you meet since you do not, literally, since you do not even know what it means to literally reject it. But when you say, you can see that cross-examination is binding, which means you don't have the ability to shift that. Also 2 points all back for the interpretation flaw, since you're able to clarify, but also 3 point, a literal restriction means some sort of concrete action rather than abstract things like a structure, but rather an action on behalf of an individual, like a judge within the debate community. Enable me to contextualize arguments based on the standards of the interpretation, enables us to have broader and more concrete discussions. Also, specifically, you should give me leeway, given the fact that the app is super, super vague, and she's able to de-link all of my arguments, so I should be able to contextualize things. And you and the 2-1 are now go to the standard level debate. You conceded that the app is super, super vague, since we do not know what it means to be a feminist killjoy or the concrete action that we're taking, which means that you were able to skirt out of any issue. Whereas if you had something like a concrete stance on freedom of speech, that would solve back for all of the problems, since you would have a concrete advocacy that we can hold you to. That always are literally everything. 8 point, even if it is good to have discussions about feminist culture, if people cannot engage them or we don't even know what your advocacy means, then we cannot adopt it, which also is terminal defense to peace, since we do not know what it means to be a feminist culture, which means that no one could endorse it. You are literally voting for nothing if you vote at 2 point. You say that you can engage because the app is predictable, but it does not matter if there is ground against the app, or there are terms that I can read. If you can just shift out of them, in the way you're also kills education, critical discussion. You are worse at defending the method of being a feminist killjoy or any sort of methodology if you do not have to engage arguments. Also, critical education outweighs literally everything. 8 point enables us to justify ourselves in a variety of situations, whereas other things are just this situation specific. Also, 8 point enables us to criticize alternative arguments that are problematic, which is a more portable skill than becoming a feminist killjoy, since you only get to be in this debate round first, which means the portable skill outweigh literally everything. Now, in the line by line of your arguments, you say that you don't. You say that you meet since you have a similar attribute. How it is bad that there are certain things that are that marginalize people, but marginalization is not the same thing as literal restrictions on speech, in which someone says you are not allowed to say something. Also, if she does talk about that, then it's not clear in the app, which means that you should not give her that leeway. Also, you say that there's no tier version of the app. No, you concede a lot of arguments for why you would be able to talk about freedom of speech in the context of the AC, which is terminal defense. All of these arguments, you said that. You said that So first, extend the reasonability is bad since people will be unfair in order to beat theory, which means that people will always lose against Stuyvesant. That means that there will be a race to the bottom in norms in the debate committee. Also, people will not enable people to incentivize having better positions and enable more critical education, which means that Professor Raff is a good thing. You said that it doesn't make sense to use in this round. No, we can say the competing interpretations is always it does not make sense to not make an exclusion for this round, since obviously if I win my interpretation, that proves that you did something bad, and we can always use reasonability, which means that we get both of the benefits. You said that it's a race to the top means that we'll no substantive education. No, you can see that the response to that theory, the response to the Smith card, that theory is a good thing. It's able to look at things from a variety of angles, which means that we should have more theory education, which means that theory education is good. Also, theory is good since it links to critical thinking, cross-life and critical thinking. Now, as you said, there's no bright line that could justify things about that are abusive. No, if I'm winning my abuse story on theory, then that proves that there would be something that you could justify. Also, you say that you say that it's for reasonability with a bright line of access to link and impact turnaround and being disclosed. One point, there is no impact turnaround, since obviously people aren't going to say that oppression in the debate community is a good thing, which means that you do not meet your bright line. Also, 2 point, there's no impact turnaround, since your off is really vague, which means that we do not hold you to anything, which means that there cannot be link or impact turnaround, since you have no stable advocacy, which means that if I'm winning all of the off, if I'm winning the advantages to my interpretation, you don't get access to this argument. You say, you said that you said that there's more education, and I can just have a counter interpretation group. All of these arguments presume an offense defense paradigm, which means that you also have to use an offense defense paradigm on theory. Also, if my arguments are linking back to inclusion in theoretical education, then they're on the same layer as the AC, which means that I can weigh those arguments comparatively against the offense of the AC. Now, go to the case top down. You say that only the off is something tangible, since you're refusing to be implicit in oppressive structures. But no, 1 point, if I win my substantive, my critical thinking arguments, then that means that you are worse, that you will be more complicit, since you don't learn how to question structures, you don't learn how to engage arguments that are contrary to your own. But also, 2 point, theory precludes substance, theory precludes substance on a higher level, since if you are losing theoretical arguments, that proves that you are being unfair. Also, do not allow her to have access here. Even if it's harder to affirm, that's not a reason that you should vote against theory, since my arguments are critical education, which critical education comes first, enables us to solve oppression in a variety of circumstances, which means that it does not matter that fairness does not matter, but also which means that fairness does not matter as much, but also even if it is harder to affirm, you conceded that judges will compensate for that substantive justification should come on a higher level, since they determine causality rather than just correlation.
I have it's like 150. Everyone good?
No, 1 second. Where on the app?
The method, then the underview, and then theory.
Okay. Sounds good.
Everyone's good?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Conceded the alpha is a good idea. The feminist skills to increase affective space is solely to resolve psychological violence within debate, which means all I have to do is be back there because you don't have any substantive arguments against me, and you did not go for any of them. Now, go to the end. You can see that norm setting is empirically denied. People still eat nibs and all the time. Additionally, even if people have stopped doing as bad things, this round is not try or die for norm setting, which means the implication of this means you do not get any office things back to you. Reasons why future rounds are changing norms to future rounds would be a good thing. It's just a question of this round now. I won't go for reasonability. I'll just win offense now. They'll go to the theory shell. You straight up conceded the net beneficial or counter interpretation, which was the cross application of Fraser 90 that discursive modes and subconscious modes of development operate to suit certain bodies, i.e., women on a political sphere, the debate sphere, and the complaints are dismissed as nagging, which means your interpretation excludes certain bodies from engaging because we cannot discuss these certain ways of subconscious modes of decorum operate to certain bodies. We have to focus on literal restrictions, i.e., literal regulations, which will allow those to go invisibilized. That's the entire point of the app. You conceded there's no topicals in the app. You say that there is one. It's implicit within the shell. No, you conceded that you need an explicit plan text, which you do not have. Additionally, none of your interpretation can solve for the app, which means all I have to do is weigh this against your standard. This outweighs. You conceded that it outweighs explicit preemptive weighing, that it outweighs your offense because it requires people to be in debate in the first place, i.e., where critical education only matters if people get those skills in the first place. But if people cannot question the way speech operates via debate, then I think it will not get those skills. Piece one is it controls the scrolling to critical education, while only your app takes a critical stance on the subconscious modes of decorum that operate now. I'm going also for the interpretation flaw. It was really badly answered. There's no definition of what literal means. If Logan reads app is okay, and the act talks about pseudo regulations. It begs the question of what is a literal concrete regulation. The implication is to reject the interpretation because it's incoherent and cannot set a good norm under a norm setting, which is just not answered. You say CX is binding and CX solves. No, it's not about CX. It's about what your interpretation says. So you say literal is about concrete individual action. No, again, this doesn't make sense. So additionally would mean that our act definitely meets this if that's what it means, because there are a group of individuals that prevent other bodies from engaging. Now, the only argument you go for that it's really vague and there's no concrete stance. No, you conceded that it's not vague. We give you a ton of ways to engage, i.e., all of the reasons from the underview. Additionally, we conceded that you tons of ways to engage. I.e., this is a literature base that you need to answer. The feminine skills rate is a literature base. It's not just something that I'm asserting, rather it's an advocate that is taking. Now, additionally, Alex, I'll go with the fact that individual acts against debate are more portable than free speech, because we will never be policymakers, but we'll have to deal with the ways that oppression operates via things like debate in a real way.
Okay. This is one of the more interesting tea debates I've judged in a while, because obviously I've seen Catherine execute a lot of these, and this debate looked a little bit different than most of them. So maybe we can just repeat the way we did it last time, where Nina, I give you feedback first, and then Catherine, I can give you feedback after.
Yeah.
Okay. So I almost always recommend to debaters, Nina, to not start with the type of overview you started with, because the beginning of your speech is ambitious in terms of what you want to cover. So all of the work you did explaining to me how substance is going to break out became irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that you should do sub-issue overviews. Like, you should do an issue, like on the tea debate, if I were you, I would divide the tea debate into 3 parts. One part is the paradigm debate, right? The second part is the I meet debate, and then the third part is the line by line of the interp counter-interp debate. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And so what I would do if I were you is I would put an overview on each of those 3 parts that is relevant for it. So the overview I'd put on the paradigm issue debate is, LOL, you've conceded new arguments in the 2NR. I'm going to just make a crap ton of new arguments now and you're screwed, right? Then the overview I'd put on the I meet debate is spirit over text and err heavily neg on this question because the AF is vague. And then I would line by line it. And then the overview I would put on the interp counter-interp debate is some sort of standards weighing. So in this debate, it seems like you end up really sitting on these substantive engagement arguments, and you end up really explaining how, like, the most portable way for us to learn from debate is for us to be well prepared and have substantive engagement with the AF. So we would get better engagement if this AF was topical, right? And I think that what you should do is weigh that specifically against this sort of nagging disad that the 2AR ends up going for.
Yeah.
And I also was, like, surprised you didn't do any weighing about, like, no cross-apps from substance to theory, right?
Wait, did you do that on the app?
Yeah, let me just check if you did.
I just
you
remember
did.
doing, like, at the end of the 2NR.
Correct, you did. I'm wrong about that, my bad. So you definitely did. You said theory precludes substance on a higher level, even if it's harder to affirm. That's not a reason to vote against theory. Critical education comes first because we need to solve oppression. So the problem, though, I see with this weighing is it seems to be specific to like an argument the 1AR doesn't go for. I was confused when you were making this argument because the AF doesn't in the 1AR go for any reason why it's harder to affirm. And you say critical education comes first. Presumably nagging is like a form of critical education, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think my personal recommendation would be to do the more like traditional, just like you straight up don't get a cross app from substance to theory. And the reason why is because fairness comes first. Because right now you're sort of trying to do 2 things at once, and it's not really clear what this weighing argument, like, there's no clear warrant for why you preclude substance. Your warrant is based on like an answer to affirming is harder, which the 1AR is not really going for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And your weighing argument that would be relevant is critical education comes first because we get to solve oppression from a variety of like perspectives and circumstances. And so, given that that framing exists, it seems like the 2AR would be able to hijack that pretty easily because its net benefit is based off critical education, not fairness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, reconceptualizing what the reconceptualizing what the function of your overview is. Right now in the status quo, I would say about 90% of overviews I hear are useless. And you don't have time for a useless overview, right? Like you have to trust your judge. If you're preffing people at TOC, you trust them to evaluate the debate. You don't need to like hold their hand and be like, if I move this chess piece, then that affects that chess piece, and that means it's a checkmate here, right? That work should be like clear to them just by the logic of how the debate works. What you should be doing is like content-based overviews.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion.
Put any overview at the top?
No, definitely not. In really good debates, dude, you don't have time for that shit. You gotta like just start moving, you know? And you gotta like, I would put overviews, where I would do your overviews, the content-based stuff, is when you're transitioning between levels of the flow. So here's what I mean. When you're transitioning from topicality to the counterplan, you can be like, at this point in the debate, it's conclusively decided in favor of the negative, but topicality is also a no-risk issue. There's no RBI, so if I win substance, that's also easy neg ballot. Counterplan.
Yeah.
So
would you have cut down time on theory and gone for the counterplan?
I personally probably not, just because I don't really understand feminist killjoy. I don't really get the literature base. It depends on how comfortable you are with the counterplan and how much you've researched it. From a time allocation perspective, like a time trade-off perspective, definitely. I think that's like a good idea. But Catherine and I have sort of set this up on purpose where we under allocate on counterplans because she's like better. She knows her literature base more than other people do. And so we're cool with leaving ourselves 4 arguments, and I trust her to like really expand on it well in the 2AR. So it's you have to ask yourself like that's her best layer. So if that's the speech you want to give, you totally could. From a time trade-off perspective, it's strategic, but maybe from a win condition perspective, it may not be. Yeah, and I can give you like a lot of in-depth feedback on the theory debate if you'd like. But if,
yeah, that'd be great.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So I think we'll just go with the paradigm issues one at a time. On reasonability, you need to give me some sort of overview that compares metrics here, right? Like there are so many floating impacts on the reasonability competing interps debate, and it would be in your best interest to identify them and weigh it. So, for instance, there's this substantive education argument. There's like a race to the bottom argument. There's this judge intervention argument, right? And I would just say, like, look, there are lots of floating impacts on reasonability competing interpretations. You need some way to filter through them. Here's how you do this. Judge intervention definitely comes first. A point is it's not reversible. We can get substantive education in other debates, and we can also have like a race to the bottom to the top. That's like a circular debate. Whereas if the round is intervened against, there's nothing we can do about that, right? And B point is like magnitude. You can still win the debate even if it's reasonability or competing interpretations, but you cannot win the debate once it's intervened. And then winning conclusively your first impact and then leaving defense on the other impact. So think of it like a util debate. Like in a util debate, the AF reads 2 advantages, the neg reads 3 disadds. Each advantage in this debate is an impact on reasonability competing interp. So one advantage could be race to the bottom. Another advantage could be like substantive education. Another advantage could be advocacy shift. Another advantage could be arbitrariness or judge intervention, right? And you have to weigh them out against one another. Right now, it's just sort of a clusterfuck where you like go for everything and you're responding to everything, and it's just not clear where consolidation is happening.
Yeah.
And like ultimately, what ends up happening is you overinvest on reasonability, and the 2AR kicks it.
Yeah.
Right? And so what you want to do is put the overview on reasonability competing interpretations, weigh between the impacts, put defense on her impacts, win one of your impacts, and then leave yourself a parachute, which is the you don't meet your reasonability bright line argument.
Yeah.
That would be how I handle reasonability and competing interps. And in an ideal world, you're spending no more than 90 seconds on that.
Yeah.
Then on the next sort of paradigm trick, which is the interp flaw stuff, this is a very clever argument that Catherine is making, and it's sort of one that I taught her how to make, and it's a very trolly argument that the U school used to make all the time. Like, where it sort of came about from is people would read, like, this nib's badge shell, and then, like, U school would be like, you don't define what a nib is. A nib could be, like, the National Institute of Buildings or something like that. And so they would be like, that is an interp flaw. And that means your interp cannot set norms, which means it's terminal defense because you say competing interpretations. So I think that you need to throw the kitchen sink at it, and that would look like spirit of the interp versus text of the interp. That would look like CX. I think the CX's binding argument isn't very good, right? Because it's not about like CX, it's about literally what your interpretation says. So CX's binding would sort of appeal to spirit over text.
Yeah.
And the second thing is then if you don't think your interp is flawed, then you have to define clearly what a literal restriction is and why that's clear enough. And so I think that your handling of that is not the best it could have been. I think the 2NR specifically needs to talk about Logan's AF, right? Because you mentioned that as a potential like TVA or AF that meets your interp in the 1N cross-X. And the 1AR specifically is like, look, like if Logan's AF is topical, so is mine. That's explicit rhetoric that the 1AR is making. And the 2AR's sort of explosion on that is very powerful, given that you're not referring to that AF anymore. So you need to, like, if you're going to bring up other people's AFs, you need to be very clear about, like, this is the difference between Logan's AF and yours. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Then I feel like you overinvest on winning your engagement argument. Like, she has one response to engagement that actually responds, which is that there's tons of ways you could have engaged, lots of ways to respond. And the true answer here is, yes, I could have read all the generic arguments you listed, but that begs the question of what good engagement is. If we want to have a cap debate every single round, and that's the only way we engage this AF, that illustrates the larger point I'm making, which is that your AF creates a world in which everybody, like, finds their part of the library that they like, defend the most random thing in the world, and then they tell you that you have to like find in-depth research against that. And while you're doing that, they only read one AF, so their front lines are like hundreds of pages long, and your front lines are like non-existent because you're also prepping out every other AF. So your ability and incentive and desire to engage with the AF is shot. And it's that simple. Right? And that argument, your only argument here is that like if it's worse engagement, it doesn't matter. And I think you're doing a lot of work, like probably a little bit too much work, honestly, doing like impacting of this, right? Like the impact is conceded. The impact is conceded that it outweighs everything else on the T debate, and that if people can't engage, that's a bad thing. The 1AR does not concede whether that's, or does not contest whether that's a bad or a good thing. And so the 2NR is doing almost 45 seconds of impacting off this, whereas it could get away with easily 20 seconds. So that's like one place you can save half a minute, right? And if you save half a minute there, then that is a half a minute you can spend time sucking her on substance, or doing more weighing between your net benefit and the nagging disad. So I think the only other note I had for you was signposting. I think that, again, the signposting is a little messy here. Like, the very end is indicative. Like, at the very end, you tell me to go to the top of the AF, and so I go to the top of the AF, and then you start doing, like, theory stuff, and that's, like, not where it was on the flow. And so that's something to just think about. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem. Do you have any questions?
How is like the NC in terms of time allocation?
I think the NC invested a lot of time on the underview, which is probably a good idea given how extensive it is. I think the NC time allocation is smart, honestly. I'm surprised you didn't have your shell fully scripted. It would have been a little probably faster for you to get out that way. I think that I think the NC time allocation made sense to me. It was about 4.5. It was about 4 minutes on T, 2 minutes and 15 seconds on the counterplan, and about 45 seconds on substance, which is probably the right way to do it. So yeah, I don't think the problem is the NC. I think the 2NR should be frontlined on its counterplan if this is the counterplan it wants to read. The 2NR should be really well drilled on this reasonability debate and should have the 2NR should basically have a plan for the order in which it's going to go about giving the speech and why it's going to give it in that order. And then it should execute. Yeah. So you've had a couple of reasonability competing interps debates now. If you are going to drill it, this is the time to do it because it will be helpful for you at TSC. But yeah, I think the 1N made sense. I think the 2NR can execute it in a clearer way. Cool. Anything else?
I don't think so. I'll message you if I think of anything.
Cool. Sounds good. So I'll talk to you in 15 minutes.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool.